So Kiko Martinez becomes the new IBF Featherweight champion of the world after absolutely starching Kid Galahad. Talk about a bad day at the office. Kid Galahad, where oh where did it go wrong? I didn't do a pre-fight video on this fight because I felt like, yeah, it has the potential to be a tough fight for Galahad. Martinez, for those who don't know, is someone who always gives it a go. He's known as a bit of a danger man, and if you're not prepared for him, he can really push you to your limits, if not beat you, and beat you badly. But I felt like Galahad would have a bit too much, and maybe Martinez is at the end of his career, maybe doesn't still bring that same intensity. But I stand corrected, and what a brutal knockout that was. From the early rounds, you could see that Galahad was just having a bit more success at long range, but Martinez was very much in the fight. I'm sure you've seen the first knockdown in the 5th round, and the stoppage comes with that arcing right hook from Martinez that hits Galahad flush on the chin as he's in the southpaw stance. Now, if you've only seen the highlights, that might just come across as a bit of a punch out of the blue, you know, Martinez striking lightning in a bottle. However, if you watch the fight, you'll see that Martinez attempts and even lands that same punch as early as the 2nd round. So it was definitely something he had in his mind, and he definitely wanted to try and catch Galahad with that punch. And every round he seems to just be getting closer and closer until the 5th and the 6th, where he just absolutely iced Galahad and sent him to the canvas like a sack of spuds. I think this performance highlights some of the concerns about Galahad, because he was, as I say, he was having success at long range, but he didn't really have much power or strength to get the respect of Martinez. Because that's the thing with Kiko Martinez, he understands where his advantages lie. Because if you look at him, he's built like a garden gnome. He's like 5 nothing, and he knows better than anyone else that he has to be in mid or close range to really have some success. And so he's not trying to hang about at long range, trying to be patient and feel you out and so on and so forth. He's looking to get straight in, get stuck in, and land some hard shots. And so, firstly, there were times where Kid Galahad was actually engaging Kiko Martinez up close, in close range, and his inside fighting was amateurish at best. You know, he doesn't really understand the nuances of inside fighting. Kind of just resorted to standing chest to chest with Kiko Martinez and winging in some arm shots. It was very amateurish stuff. But also, he just couldn't stamp his authority on Kiko Martinez. He couldn't hit him with anything big enough, though he did momentarily stun Martinez. And I think the 2nd round, he threw a left hand from the southpaw stance, and Martinez's legs stiffened up a little bit, but he recovered soon after that and just went back to work. And you had Galahad, who you can see his habits. He doesn't really move his head much. He has some decent control of his body at times, but he's not the most proactive when it comes to his guard and his defense. And instead, he'll usually just rely on controlling the opponent. He'll stiff arm the opponent. He'll get a glove on their head, their neck, their shoulder. Can be a little bit excessive with it at times, but he opts to restrict his opponent's mobility rather than move himself. And now, you guys who have watched my studies and heard me talk about boxing before, you know that's something that I rate in fighters. The art of control. You know, you physically restrict where a fighter can and can't go. But that's only one aspect of defense. It's one layer. To have effective defense and offense, you want to have multiple layers to it to really make it difficult for your opponent to fight you, to box with you. And that's not what we saw from Galahad. And I feel like that was the prime example of that is when you see Galahad, whether he's in an orthodox stance or a southpaw stance in front of his opponent, his head pretty much remains in the same place. It's just like ever so slightly on his rear leg. You know, he's on the back foot of his stance, whether it's an orthodox or southpaw stance. And when he's in that southpaw stance, he was just trying to drift away from that right hook that Martinez was throwing. But at the same time, he'd separate from his guard. So his head would go backwards and his hand would go forwards. So you've just lost one of your layers of defense. And he's still in the trajectory of the punch. And Martinez would just catch him clean and ice him. So yeah, I think it definitely highlighted some of the shortcomings of Kid Galahad. And I think in general, some people may say, and I'm sure Team Galahad and Eddie Hearn are going to say, that it was the weight. You know, he can't make featherweight 126 pounds anymore. It's time to move up. And I'm sure maybe there's some validity to that. But personally, I just think that Martinez he brings a style and a pace and an intensity that Kid Galahad, he doesn't work well with. And if you look at Kid Galahad in his last fight, say against Jazza Dickens, I think like that fight perfectly encapsulates how Galahad fights, because he doesn't fight at a fast pace, but he doesn't fight at a slow pace. He fights at this kind of moderate pace, and it's constant from the first round to the last. You see very little dips in Galahad's output and energy. Whereas if you take him to a fast pace, he might not like it, and he starts making a lot of mistakes. And I feel like that's what this fight against Martinez highlighted. But also a question I've had in my head for a while now is, what is the chin of Kid Galahad actually like? Because if you go onto his box rec and you look at the people he's fought, just fought Martinez, of course, lost that one. But when he fought James Dickens before that, Jazza Dickens, he's not a puncher. Certainly not a puncher at all. Claudio Morero, he's a big guy, strong, fast and athletic, but he wasn't really let into the fight by Galahad from the first round, so he didn't really land anything meaningful. Before him was Josh Warrington. Josh Warrington, someone else who isn't a puncher, certainly not a prolific puncher, seems to make up for it with more volume. Brian Marina, I'm not sure who that is, 10-4-1, he doesn't seem like a puncher. Toka Khan Clary, I don't know if he's a puncher, but he's an explosive guy. He's quick, but once again, he didn't really land anything meaningful on Kid Galahad. So maybe Kid Galahad has always had a bit of a shaky chin and has just been able to shut people out of fights and avoid taking too many big shots, to the point where it was never really a problem. But then he's come up against someone in Kiko Martinez who's a rough, tough guy, a good pressure fighter, got a decent amount of power for his size. And this is what happens to Kid Galahad. So, yeah, where does Kid Galahad go from here? I think they're going to have a long, hard think about that, because if Matchroom and Eddie Hearn with their rematch clauses wants to make an immediate rematch, I don't know if that goes well for Kid Galahad. We'll have to see. But nevertheless, credit to Kiko Martinez, completely iced Kid Galahad nicely. It was a very clean knockout, And yeah, so what's Martinez's record now? So he's 43, 10 and 2. So 43 wins, 10 losses and 2 draws. And he's now become a champion once again. So credit to him, man. Credit to the Spanish Garden Gnome, Kiko Martinez. Great performance. Yeah, Eddie Hearn must be sick as a dog right now, because he's just lost Kid Galahad is no longer a champion, and neither is Terry Harper, because she got starched as well. So, yeah, rough night for Eddie Hearn, but even rougher for those two, because they're the ones that actually had to take the punches. But nevertheless, I'm just waffling at this point. What did you make of this fight? What do you make of the performance of each man? Brutal knockout from Kiko Martinez. Leave it all down below, and if you could like, comment, share and subscribe. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next video.